Story 1. The moment I sneezed, I pulled something in my back. Just one sneeze, and I was on the couch thinking that this is how I go. Story 2. Weirdly enough, YouTube and internet culture at large used to belong to millennials because our elders were too old to do much with computers and younger generations were still children. It was the era of the internet reviewer with creators like the angry video game nerd and nostalgia critic dominating. Websites like You're the Man Now, Dog, and Homestar Runner spoke our language. The internet was our place. That is not the case anymore. YouTube looks very different. Creators like Mr. Beast are attracting millions, but it feels alien to me. The sense that millennial spaces are no longer the dominant force on the internet is when the feeling of middle age really set in. Story 3. I used to be able to stay awake for quite a while. Now I can barely stay awake past 12 hours. Story 4. Seeing teenagers and thinking, wow, so young. I was like that back in the day. Older is better. I would not want to be a teenager again for a million. Story 5. 1. Gray hair started as a small spot at the corner of my jawline, under my ear when I was about 40. 10 years later, only my mustache is still colorful. Everything else is salt and pepper, aches and pains. My lower back started bothering me in odd ways. I could feel the bones grinding like rubbing knuckles against each other. This has developed into general joint pain from my neck to my waist when I wake up in the morning. Sitting too long causes a nerve to pinch in my lower spine, which leads to discomfort down my thigh and into my knee. If I stoop, lean forward, or bend at the waist for more than a few seconds, I cannot straighten up right away. I have to stay bent over slightly for several seconds while my back slowly allows me to stand straight again. My sexual function has decreased. There is less sensitivity and responsiveness, making the happy ending harder to achieve. Even when successful, it is much less enthusiastic than before. It is disappointing. Story 6. I was in an elevator listening to some instrumental elevator music. It took me a moment to realize it was Enter Sandman Orchestral. I felt disappointed that day. Story 7. It's a bunch of little things. Long hikes where the aches in my hips set in a mile or two earlier, chopping my long hair off and not missing it as much as I thought I would, not being at the cutting edge of social media like I was back in the MySpace and early Facebook days, the crow's feet and lines starting to set in. I love them. They're lines of a life well lived so far. When I was young, I was scared about getting older. I'm 39 now. It's not so bad. Just take care of yourself and be the best version of you that you can. Story 8. When I had to stop myself from buying a floral bed cover, I also had a conversation at work about the September 11th attacks, the Bali bombings, and the Thailand tsunami. They told me they learned about these events at school. Story 9. Went to a birthday party. Had only one glass of sangria, light dancing, and karaoke. Woke up tired and sore. Story 10. Either when I started to enjoy my own company more than others, or when I challenged my child to a 60-meter race and started running without any warm-up at all because I did not need that when I was 23. It was just like that scene in Family Guy when Peter's body shuts down while playing baseball. Story 11. I stopped being invested in power struggles. When I notice someone going in that direction, whether in relationships or conversations, I have learned to be comfortable with my silence and disengage. Story 12. A doctor literally told me so. To this day, I laugh at the fact that I have an official diagnosis of not being young anymore. Story 13. Seeing things I used to use regularly as a kid now on display in museums or referred to as vintage or retro. Music from my teens on classic hits radio. Feels like a knife straight through the heart. Story 14. My son and I used to have a whiskey and a cigar on Fridays to decompress from the week. One time we were sitting there, I looked over to see him taking a sip of whiskey and thought, I changed that man's diapers. Story 15. While talking to a couple of coworkers about our favorite Disney movies. Me, I think The Lion King is my favorite Disney movie. Coworker, is it really good? I only watched the computer-generated imagery one. The original one was released 7 years before I was born, so I figured I could pass on that one. Well, thank you for casually reminding me that my coworker could literally be my son. In fact, transitioning from, I'm the youngest in this office, to I'm one of the oldest here happened over the span of 2 years. At least it feels like that. Story 16. Showing signs of aging, younger people annoy me with their behavior. My knees hurt, and so does my body if I do not stretch. The children and elders call me Senora. Story 17. When I noticed that the wise elder characters in stories, the grizzled veteran sergeant, the knight teaching the young hero, the police officer who is getting too old for this, were portrayed as younger than I was. Story 18. When things started to not improve every time I get hurt or sick, some small part does not fully recover. I am turning 40 this year. Story 19. I check my plans for tomorrow before I eat anything exciting, delicious, or spicy. Also, I have started bird watching. Story 20. When Elvis first emerged, I did not understand the excitement, as we already had a perfectly good Bing Crosby. It gradually became clear to me that no 20-year-olds were listening to Bing anymore. Story 21. My environment told me that I am starting to look ridiculous with some things because they are no longer appropriate for my age, which is 41. Story 22. I sneezed incorrectly and somehow pulled a muscle in my back. I couldn't move without screaming for about 2 days. Story 23. I don't really wear makeup anymore besides the occasional beauty balm cream, but I'm going on vacation, so I decided to buy some mascara and eyeliner pens in fun colors. However, when I tried them out, it turns out my eyes are too droopy and wrinkly. The eyeliner color just gets smeared around and lost in the folds. Story 24. My knee. I have had the knee of a 50-year-old laborer since I was 20. Wear safety gear when participating in dangerous sports and follow your doctor's instructions when they give you a physiotherapy schedule. Story 25. Haha. For me, it was the moment I got genuinely excited about buying a new vacuum cleaner. I used to care about concerts or late-night parties, but now a good vacuum deal gets me much more excited. Story 26. I am getting colonoscopies and prostate examinations. My children make fun of me for being born in the 1900s. Story 27. Oh, easy. My children asked me why I looked older than other mothers. Having children humbles you like nothing else. Story 28. I get excited about new furniture and household appliances. I am also really looking forward to sleep. Story 29. Realizing there is a new generation named Alpha, and we, Generation Z, have no idea what to do for them. Story 30. When asked for identification and they see 19 as the first 2 digits of the year, they just hand it back because they do not have to do the math to know I am over 18. Story 31. Changes in my skin. It is not like before. More cellulite and sagging begin to appear on my legs more easily if I do not take care of myself. My arms still look less moisturized if I do not take care of myself. I think it is just the lack of collagen. I do not know. Story 32. I had a trip to a theme park. I got out of the shower and stretched. I pulled a muscle in my neck. I honestly contemplated canceling the trip. I spent the day covered in deep heat. After 5 roller coasters, I think that was when I realized. Story 33. I was that girl, the center of attention, running clubs and underground raves, the party girl popular. All of a sudden, I had no desire for that. I would rather stay home, eat bonbons, and watch television with my cat. Story 34. The other day, everyone in the office was on lunch except me and 2 others, who are 20 and 23 years old. In my head, I thought, oh, just us young people. Then immediately remembered I am 47. Story 35. When I stopped caring about the latest game system, I just could not be bothered anymore. Video games are not a priority for me anymore. Nintendo apparently just released a Switch 2, and I do not care enough to get excited about it. If my funds were reliable, then maybe I would care, but I make so little that I do not feel like investing time in video games anymore. Story 36. Weirdly enough, someone was talking about the Christopher Eccleston Doctor Who series and describing it as airing 2 decades ago. I was like, Jesus, that can't be true. Story 37. Too lazy to go out or make plans. Cannot handle alcohol like I used to. Gained weight. Having random cramps and aches. And I am tired, everyone. I am so tired. Story 38. I am excited about the mini vacuum cleaner and a special sponge that actually collects all the dust from the surface. Story 39. When it is Friday night and I am more interested in figuring out how to fold the towels so they sit perfectly in the drawer than I would be going out and socializing. For the record, it is thirds lengthwise, then thirds widthwise, making sure to fold it over and back rather than over and over. Story 40. I find it hard to stay up past 11 p.m. Even at 9:30 p.m., I am ready to get in bed. I love it though. I prioritize my sleep, and I actually feel well rested when I get at least 7 to 8 hours. I can no longer survive on under 5 hours of sleep. Story 41. When my knees started hurting every morning and I got excited about new kitchen appliances. Yes, the kitchen one got me really good. Story 42. I have never felt young really, but definitely when I started getting back and knee pain. I am only 30, but my back just gets sore. Story 43. I am more addressed with the normal form of my first name rather than the shortened form. I have had hangovers that lasted all day. I have vivid memories of events that happened 15 to 20 years ago. Story 44. When men twice my age started seeing me as a target to threaten, I realized I am an adult now and nobody is going to see these things happen and step in. I am currently 23, which is still technically young, but I have had some experiences with much older men choosing to threaten me. I can handle myself, but it is honestly strange having encounters with aggressive people older than my own parents. I always stay in my lane, but it is not always enough. Story 45. Finding enjoyment in buying household items. When I bought a new washer and dryer and was excited to try them out, I knew it was my time. Story 46. I threw my back out by sneezing too hard. Not lifting something heavy, not playing a sport, sneezing. That was the day I knew. Story 47. Well, I got tendinitis in my left shoulder from doing work that would barely tire me in my 20s. I often joke that I am as agile as a cat that is my age. Story 48. The moment you realize you will no longer have a summer vacation like you did before. No more 2 months of wasting time doing nothing. At best, you get 2 weeks off work per year, excluding bank holidays. With hindsight, I really should not have hurried into employment. Story 49. Every time I walk up and down stairs, my knees sound like cement mixers and my ankles crack loudly. Story 50. When I reached for my favorite unicorn mug at the back of the cupboard, I hurt my back to the point of paralysis, which lasted 5 whole days. Story 51. When I couldn't surf the big waves I used to surf, I was afraid I could get hurt and was concerned about insurance coverage, something I never even considered as a young man. Story 52. I fell off a stepladder trying to adjust the water heater temperature because I couldn't see the thermostat properly with my poor eyesight and hurt my hand. Story 53. When everything that used to bring me joy became dull, I started grasping and clenching every little happy hormone I could get my hands on. Story 54. Getting silently upset at the barista for making a bad coffee that I paid $7 for. When I was younger, I did not even know the difference between a good cup of coffee and a bad one. Story 55. Saga balls, aches, and pains. I also now realize I use some words that most people do not know. I used the word shtick recently. Most in the group thought I made it up. Story 56. I went to a 9 Inch Nails concert, jumped around like I was still 20, and then paid for it with leg and back pain for about a week. Story 57. A random Generation Z called me uncle just to ask the time, and that's when it hit me. I am not young anymore, I am a sir with back pain now. And I am only 30, bro. 30. Story 58. I was onboarding a new hire at work and realized they were born the year after I graduated high school. Story 59. I am 31 years old and my body suddenly has many problems. I am going to the doctor once or twice a month to figure out what is going on with me. I do not live a healthy lifestyle, so I have damaged my own body. Vaping for 13 years has damaged my lungs. Yes, it does cause harm because you are inhaling chemicals. I found out my left heart valve is slightly prolapsed, enlarged, and leaking blood into the right chamber of my heart. I have hypertension, obesity, which I am working on, and I am very unfit. I need to exercise for my heart and hypertension. I also have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, depression, and anxiety, which seem to be getting worse. Story 60. When I randomly started paying attention to how all the famous people I know suddenly look very old. I am sure I have seen it happen over time, but I swear it feels like one day I woke up and just paid attention. The same goes for my relatives. Then you get hit with the headlines that a game you played as a kid is now more than 20 years old. Story 61. Odd pains. The value that good sleep brings to my life. The fact that after 3 pints I know I will have a bad day the next day. My knees and my back hurt daily. My declining vision. The fact that I must wear earplugs to thoroughly enjoy a heavy metal concert or festival. To name a few. It is all downhill from your mid-30s, apparently. Story 62. I went to play soccer and some high school students were on the field. I jokingly said, "I'm part of the team," and one student responded, "You don't look young," or something along those lines. Mind you, I was 22 or 23 years old. Story 63. When people ask if a driving test still teaches this or that, I think back and realize they do. Oh wait, that was 25 years ago. Story 64. For some reason, this year became a turning point for my body. I am just 25 years old. I have experienced little aches throughout my body and wounds that take much longer to heal than usual. Yesterday, I experienced some acid buildup after eating pizza, which did not feel right. It feels like I get hurt more easily by overstretching and lying in awkward positions under dashboards, as I am a mechanic. All of this happened over the course of a few months. Is this what getting old feels like? Story 65. You are old when you do not know modern-day popular culture and cannot use simple technology. If you had no idea who Kendrick Lamar was before the Super Bowl, you are old. If you still have no idea who Kendrick Lamar is after the Super Bowl, you are out of touch. Story 66. Working at a place where there are many teenagers and realizing I am thinking to myself, "Bussin'? Cap? What are these kids saying?" Sure, there is Urban Dictionary, but I did not use to have to keep a tab open for it. Story 67. Being around people in their 20s and being annoyed by their constant talking and slang sounds old even when I write it, but it is true. Hearing slay and "I love that for you" while trying to work irritates me. Story 68. In my younger days, I never could get drunk. Yesterday, I had 3 drinks after a long time, and I felt terrible afterward with headache, body ache, nausea, and tiredness. Story 69. Video games do not give me the same happiness as they used to when I was younger. I want to stay home alone more lately. I just want to have inner peace. I go out with friends once or twice a month because we live in different cities. I listen to music more and watch Netflix more. Due to my job, I have back pain and knee pain. Story 70. My favorite game Kingdom Hearts 2 has its 20th anniversary this year. My uncle has a child named after one of the characters who is nearly 10. Story 71. When I was sitting at the bar and saw my cousin smile, he was only 32, but the wrinkles on his face made him look so old. Then I thought to myself, I am a year older than him. Story 72. I threw my back out bending over to pick up my boxers off the floor. I never felt older in my life than when that happened. Story 73. Aside from looking into the mirror and seeing my mother staring back, it had to be in the last few months when, all of a sudden, after a lifetime of service, my knees decided they were going to hurt every time I go up and down stairs. I live on the 4th story of a walk-up building. Story 74. When I started buying tickets to concerts of bands that I really love but then didn't go to the show because it was too complicated, hot, cold, long toilet lines, crowded, and so on. Story 75. As a television enthusiast, when I am randomly listening to entertainment news, I have no idea who 80% of the people being mentioned are. When my younger sister, who is 20, talks about a pop star, I have no clue or even care. Story 76. Probably 20 minutes ago, when someone asked me my age during a video game session, I answered truthfully. They replied, "Damn, I didn't know people that age played this game." I felt myself crumble into ash. Story 77. My close-up vision fails after I have been awake for a long time. No amount of squinting or eye rubbing relieves it. It is complete vision failure. Story 78. Parents aging, gray hair scattered around my head haphazardly at 24. Once completely refusing certain foods, I have grown to accept them. Story 79. Not being able to drink much anymore. The hangovers, anxiety, and aches and pains last for days and just aren't worth it anymore. And being excited about evening walks with my audiobook. Story 80. I was playing Fallout 76, and a player asked me how old I was. I said 30. They replied with oof. And that response hurt so much. Story 81. I am a teacher in my late 20s and casually mentioned Britney Spears when discussing music icons. Not a single Year 7 student, aged 11 or 12, knew who I was talking about during the lesson. My best friend, born a day after me, is also pregnant. Many of my other school friends have announced their engagements over the past few years. Finally, Facebook is now seen as the social media platform for older people, replacing Snapchat. Also, I do not understand TikTok. Story 82. I mostly injure myself by sleeping in the wrong position, not from any reckless behavior related to alcohol. Story 83. I was outside having a smoke when a group of teenage kids came by on their bikes. Every single one of them said, "Good afternoon, sir." I was surprised. I was only 33 at the time. Story 84. When I picked up an order from the store, the cashier asked me if I had any children. When I asked why she was asking, she said a boy in her class had my last name and wondered if I was his father. Story 85. At a large outdoor concert, they announced the artist's name, and I remembered, it's the slim, pretty, dark-haired man. Then a balding, overweight man appeared and started singing. I thought that guy I remember was from about 15 years ago. Story 86. My niece saw a floppy disk on my desk and said, "Oh cool, a three-dimensional printed save icon. I have not recovered." Story 87. When exercising stopped being about looking better and started being about maintaining my quality of life as I age. Story 88. I got a job at a restaurant when I was 39, and none of the 20-something coworkers invited me out after shifts. Story 89. I have a friend who is 10 years younger than me. He is 25, and I am 35. While he is very grounded and mature for his age, which is a big reason we get along so well, I still forget he is 25. For example, the other night on a Tuesday, he and I went to a local bar for a few beers and to play some pool. I had 2 beers and played 2 games. He had 8 beers, stayed after I left, and played with some locals until 11:45 that night. I went home at 8 o'clock, walked the dog, and was watching Netflix in bed by 9:15. Story 90. When girls started saying, "You, get away from me, you creepy old man," instead of "hello," it really happened about a week after my 30th birthday too. Story 91. Getting hurt or sick and taking a long time to heal when you used to recover easily, that is when you know. Story 92. When I was an Uber driver and picked up a teenager, he wanted to connect his phone to play music and played some hip-hop I had never heard of. I asked if he listened to old school music and he said, "Yeah, I listen to T-Pain here and there." Story 93. When I slipped in public, people came to ask me if I was okay instead of laughing or hoping it had been recorded. Story 94. Also, wearing less makeup. I used to be fully made up all the time. Now I cannot be bothered with contouring anymore. Story 95. Overheard the boss talking about lunch and said, "I'll see what the manager has to say," in reference to me. Nature caught up with me a few years after retirement, and when I'm in the bathroom, I say to myself, "Why did I come here?" It's little hints like this that you have to forgive yourself for. I'll get to it later. Story 96. Congestive heart failure diagnosis, and a month ago had a mild stroke. At 75 years old, I have aches and pains that I never had as a younger man. Enjoy your youth because getting old is not at all like being young. Like the Jackson Browne song says, "In the end, there is one dance you do alone." Story 97. I started taking naps occasionally. College me. I'll go to sleep at 4 a.m. Some years later, I think I need to take a nap at 5 p.m. Story 98. The hangovers. After turning 23, they have gotten so bad. I used to go to class after a night of drinking and feel fresh. Now I need 2 to 3 days of bed rest to recover. Story 99. Friends I grew up partying with are still partying, and I just want to watch television and sit down. Coworkers a few years younger than me do not get my jokes. Also, I tell everyone this, your knees start to go around age 25. The creaky joints are just the beginning. Story 100. While on my morning run, I felt like I was Usain Bolt. When I finished and looked at my Garmin, the time showed that I was actually Yertle the Turtle. Story 101. When today's youth don't know how to use a video cassette recorder, a digital versatile disc player, a compact disc player, a record player, a cassette tape player, antenna television, a map, a facsimile machine, a desktop computer. Some of the newer generation only use smartphones, so desktops are unfamiliar to them. Do write in cursive, use offline methods, or understand references to older movies. In one college class I attended before the pandemic, the teacher asked how many people knew what Star Wars was. Only 2, including myself, raised their hands. They know more about social media influencers than Hollywood celebrities. Story 102. I get irritated if I am at an event that goes past 9 p.m. because I need to be in bed by 10:30 p.m. I have a bedtime routine and a morning routine that starts at about 5:30 a.m. I feel so old. I also just bought a vacuum that my wife and I were very excited about. I would not have cared about this when I was a teenager. Story 103. When I wake up at 5 a.m. every morning. When I was at the university, 5 a.m. was usually the time to go to bed. Story 104. Having adult coworkers who are too young to remember September 11th. I do not understand TikTok, and I do not want to understand it. Story 105. My eyes, aside from having poor eyesight lately as a sign of aging, no longer have my happy glow. I do not know, they just look sad. Story 106. Got into a fight. Easily won but took a few hits. In my younger years, I would have been fine 20 minutes later. I was still feeling those hits a few days later. Story 107. When I realized that when I went out running errands, I started finding teenagers at Target and similar places irrationally annoying. Story 108. When I realized my preference for a night off was snuggling with a cat on the couch under a cozy blanket, watching random documentaries. Story 109. I started to agree with my parents about many things. I also realized my parents were right about many things. My teenage self would be horrified. Story 110. Started debating with someone about why one kitchen sponge is better than another while standing in Walmart. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.